Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Asante-Amar. On behalf of Global Pan Africanism Network, you're invited today to watch a live discussion marking today, 10th of December, being Human Rights Day, as designated by the United Nations General Assembly, I think in 1982 or so. And so today, the UN theme is Recover Better. It's a theme related to COVID-19 and everything that surrounds that. However, we are focusing on us as a people, and specifically one aspect of that, which is what it means to be Black or melanated, in a racist world. So you're not going to hear too much from me today. I'm happy to introduce Brother Raki, who is one of our regular, I would say, people to grace the stage. Brother Raki, for those of you who have not met him before, he is the spokesperson for the Free West Papua campaign, and he's going to give us an update on the situation there with our people, amongst other things. So please give a warm welcome to Brother Raki. Hello, my brother. How are you doing?
Hello, Sister Angela. Thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm doing well. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, my brother, what can you tell us about how are things going with the campaign? What is the latest of the situation over in your part of the world?
Yeah, so it's really dynamic at the moment in West Papua. Just for those who haven't heard about West Papua before, I will give a short introduction about the location where it is. It's the island New Guinea, right above Australia in the Pacific region. And West Papua is like the western half of that island, and it was a former Dutch colony. And without the consultation of the indigenous West Papuans, Black indigenous West Papuans, the Netherlands signed an agreement with Indonesia and hand over our sovereignty to the current Indonesia. And since then, West Papua have been occupied, colonized, and NGOs are estimating more than 500,000 deaths in the last 60 years. That is 1/3 of our population. So just a brief summary about the past. So we have a new colonizer, which is Indonesia. And as you can see, we are not ethnically Asian, but we are really clearly part of the Melanesian and as African descent, Black, curly hair, dark skin. And yet Indonesia says we are part of them with all the misery we have to face on a daily basis. So to describe the situation is that West Papuans are basically living in their own country as third-class citizen, knowing that they are housing the largest gold mine in the world, the second largest copper mine, and many other resources. We are the poorest citizens of Indonesia. And luckily, we can say since the launch of our campaign by His Excellency, Mr. Benny Wenda, who now is the chairman, I have to correct that because we have an upgrade in the liberation movement. I think last week, the United Liberation Movement announced an interim government, and the people have forward His Excellency Benny Wenda as president. So it's really dynamic, and Indonesia is reacting very aggressively to that update, to the upgrade desired by the people. And what we can say on this important day, which is the International Human Rights Day, is that we have received reports today that colonial Indonesian military and police are, using violence again against indigenous West Papuans who are coming together today to mark this important International Human Rights Day. But this is not new. This is like by the Indonesian government not allowing indigenous Black West Papuans to express their right to form an assembly, to come together to protest. So this is a pattern of undemocratic acts by the Indonesian government against the indigenous West Papuans. But we are very optimistic because we can see the support in the Pacific region, in the African continent, and in other European countries, that the support is growing, that more politicians are taking steps against the human rights violations committed by Indonesian military and police against indigenous West Papuans. So that gives us hope, but we really need more, politicians, or especially African governments, to put pressure on Indonesia to support our just launched government in waiting to say so. So I think this is a short summary, Sister Angela.
Thank you very much, Brother Raki. I know that sometimes we do see things pass around, letters and what have you. What is maybe the best way, because obviously you're the spokesperson, we have people in-house, if you like, a global Pan Africanism Network. Is there an easier way for people to keep updated with what's happened, and like you said, perhaps ways in which they can put pressure?
Yes, absolutely. I think, so the call from the United Liberation Movement is political support by the respective governments on the African continent, but from a campaign perspective. So I would say that every individual can be a voice. So basically what I am doing here in the Netherlands, where I am based, is educating fellow citizens in The Hague, but also students, environmental organizations. If you look at the environmental issue in West Papua houses the third largest rainforest. So I think every individual can highlight, the alarming situation in West Papua by sharing posts of our Free West Papua campaign, social media accounts, by making a selfie of yourself, a video, and telling about that you are worrying about the situation in West Papua, and put it on your own social media network. You can you can organize your own event and bring together, people in your respective country or city together to talk about West Papua. And by sharing that, if there's such an event, we would love to share it on our social media platforms. And that is exactly what Indonesia don't want, that people are aware about what is happening there, about the ecocide and the genocide against the Black Melanesian West Papuans. So I think these are some things every individual can contribute to break the silence.
Okay, thank you. I just asked that because sometimes there's so much happening everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are issues, whether it's with government or anything else, and sometimes I think it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's good. We'll see what is shared on the page, and then people can. What can I say? Can jump on the bandwagon and do their own thing, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Is it? I mean, like I said, the theme for the UN, the International Human Rights Day, is COVID-19 related. Is there anything? And quite frankly, I think that there can't be anybody in the world that hasn't suffered in some respect. But is there anything specific you want to say about how our people in West Papua have been affected, and in particular, any additional or different kinds of human rights violations that's come up because of how we have to behave in this COVID-19 world?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Sister Angela. The problem in West Papua is that we can't control movements. We, as indigenous West Papuans, have really no control at all about who comes into a country, who comes into a city, and that's a really huge problem. And that, so the problem is basically it's come back to the colonial regime Indonesia, who is, just allowing, traffic from other parts of the country, other parts of the world, coming into West Papua. And I think that's the problem. We have no say at all to take certain measures to prevent, virus movements going into indigenous territory or villages, and that's really something, you know, which is disturbing. But I have no specific updates about how this works out locally in West Papua. But this is something, you know, which I'm really interesting to see how it works out. But one thing is for sure, you know, it's like another crisis above crisis we already have, right? In West Papua.
Exactly.
So it makes it even worse for the indigenous West Papuans. We're already marginalized for more than 59 years. You know, we have a threat of genocide, and then we get this pandemic where we don't have control at all. So it's a crisis above a crisis.
Absolutely. I think what you say there resonates, I think, really for Black people around the world, although you could say in Africa, you know, Africans on the continent maybe slightly differently, but definitely in the diaspora, I can speak especially about the UK, COVID-19 just seems to have exacerbated, worsened, highlighted the disparities there were anyway between, you know, how people of African descent are treated compared to everybody else, you know. And so it's it's not something that they could sweep under the carpet anymore. Now everybody is talking about the vaccines coming in. I'm not sure what the landscape looks like for our brothers and sisters in West Papua, but with all the data, with all the information that is out there, you know, I would categorically say that you know, or for us to ask ourselves the question, you know, when did any vaccine do any good for any melanated person, any African, you know? And but our people are really struggling, you know, struggling with the load of information that's coming at them, and they're not sure what to believe, what is right, what is you know, just made up. And I think I think that actually puts an extra pressure on us trying to come together to support each other, because this thing is just pushing everybody into more of, like you said, more crisis and more panic.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. So these are really worrying times, you know, for people who are already, you know, marginalized, not heard for decades, and then we got this crisis. We don't, you know exactly what is true. Is this a testing area again, once again, on the Black people first to see how the vaccine works, you know, and then to serve the global North once again after they can see whether the vaccine fails or not. You know, things like that are really, really worrying about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, there's a whole load of there's a whole load of information, and as far as I'm concerned, everything points to number one, why should we trust? Number one, why should we try any vaccine? Because we've been shown time and again that it actually does more harm, and not it's fatal. It's fatal to us as African, as people of African descent. And then even if somehow, you know, there was any safety, you know, safety in it, it's still, how do you trust something that they've knocked up and put together so quickly, when people still suffer from things like colds, people still have HIV, people still, you know, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Absolutely agree. You know, and you know, this, I think this is like a huge distraction of what the real problem is, which is it's a systematic problem, right? It's our the way of life of the global North, extracting, you know, destroying, you know, huge amount of rainforest that these viruses can come up. I think we should look at the root causes of pandemics, and that is what we should counter. But this, you know, it's absolutely not clear, and I'm really worried about, you know, the way ahead if we won't learn from what brought us into this pandemic in the first place. And I think that's the way of life of you know, mostly the global North. Extractive industries, you know, more the consumption, etc., etc.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I was going to say there's no easy answer. There is an easy answer, but it depends who you ask. Because, like I said, a lot of us are divided, and not just across the race. You know, humanity is divided. You know, lots of people, even before the pandemic, there were people against vaccines. So I think this one has just made things more difficult.
Absolutely.
So, I know we're talking specifically about being Black, or I'll say in a racist world, or African, which we equate to being Black in a racist world. And I mean, there would notably be so many human rights violations on lots of levels. You know, whether it's the children, whether it's that are forced to work too young, basically. You know, we have just today actually ends the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which actually affects everybody, but it affects women and girls disproportionately. And so I can't say that it's wrong that the UN focuses on COVID-19, because everybody, I mean, it's a declared pandemic, isn't it? But like you said, that is something that has just added to every other human rights crisis that was happening in the first place.
Yeah, you know, from my sister. So from my point of view, now, you know, the global north is facing a crisis because their economy is almost on a, you know, on a lockdown, and that is why they react like they react now, you know. But what about, you know, the occupation of West Papuans, or what is happening in Africa, where there are already vaccines, but, you know, they didn't give them to help the people in Africa, right? So now, you know, it's like a privilege a crisis for them, and now, you know, the entire world should, you know, proactively work, because their lives are at stake, to say so.
That's very interesting. It's so true. It's so true. And you know, what is happening, especially in the UK. I can't speak for other countries. Here, not so much in Ghana, but in the UK, the rules that exist are so confusing in terms of first they have lockdowns, nobody can move, and then but it's okay. You know, certain businesses can open. You know, children can go to school. You can congregate in limited numbers in some areas, but then in lots of, you know, it's very confusing. And I think people are fast realizing that, well, quite frankly, like you said, they cannot cope with another attack on the economy. And then you think, well, then if there really is a virus or something specific that is, you know, killing people, is it worth having a good economy if everybody's dead?
Yeah, that's interesting. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I get they have
Exactly.
to have a balancing act. They have to have a balance. I get, but I think this really is the time where we need to question. We need to question more, like question everything, because I don't think anything. I don't think anything is a question anymore.
You know, if this doesn't make them think that things have to, you know, go different, you know, I'm really asking. I would really say to them, asking themselves, what is science, right? Because the scientists already predicted this, that it would happen if we won't, you know, stop, if we won't learn from our way of life. So if they don't learn to radically change the system of profit, of greed, it will come back. This kinds of pandemics. And if we don't care about people in the global south, about destroying environments, you know, these are the root causes. So I think this is a moment of rethink about the way ahead, and I really, you know, call to them to do the right thing, because otherwise there won't be a future for us or a planet for us to live if we move forward like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Raki. I just want to also now welcome onto the stream Brother Ishmael Afati. Welcome. Can you please unmute yourself? Can you hear me, Ishmael?
All right, yeah, yes,
Okay, wonderful. Welcome to the platform. I don't know if you caught any of what we're talking about. I mean, brother Raki was just updating us on the situation in West Papua. But where you are based, is there anything specifically you want to say about the human rights violations or what it means to be African, dark skinned, black in a racist world where you are? Where are you based?
okay. Thank you so much. I am based in Gambia, in West Africa. Basically, we are not facing a lot of human right violation here. If I say there is no human right violation in the Gambia, I might be wrong, because basically we live in a world that is full of human rights. But as a Pan Africanist,
We can hear you. Whoops. Oh, I think we seem to have lost. We seem to have lost him. That was a shame. I was just getting ready for what he was going to say.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
yeah, it would be interesting to hear from him because I know one of our fellow members, Pan African, has recently gone to the Gambia and is actually having a good time, but went from the UK. And
Wow.
I know other people in the UK who are going to the Gambia to flee what is happening in the UK. And I think I would say, having only left there a few months ago, that yes, there are difficulties. People are struggling in some
Yeah.
areas, in a lot of
Yeah.
areas, but people are struggling to make ends meet, like have their basic needs met. Um, like other countries are in the world with COVID-19 and the lockdown came, increased human rights violations across the board, but in particular violence. Violence against women, against girls, against children. Um, but having said all of that, I will still say that as a Black person, as an African person, there is a freedom that we have here on the continent that we do not have in the diaspora. There is some, I don't know if you can relate to that being where you are in the Netherlands, Brother Raki. But it's the things that you're not worrying about. You're not worrying about the color of your skin when you're out here because practically everybody looks like you. There may still be issues. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, absolutely agree. I last year I visited our brothers and sisters in Cape Town, South Africa, and the moment I step out, entering the airport and the city, I feel like such a different spirit as when I walk here in The Hague, and all the people around me are mostly white. It is a different, right? You really feel like people see you and look different at you. And when I was in Cape Town, it was really different. But I can see that Brother Ismaila's back, so please give him the word, Sister Angela. Thank you.
Sure, Brother Ishmael,
yeah,
we were looking forward
thank you
to
so much
hearing.
for
Yes,
giving me the
you're welcome.
yes. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Yeah, I was having some issue with the connection in my area here.
Okay.
Basically, I live in Gambia, West Africa, and I cannot say that in Gambia we don't have human rights violation, but it's very minimal because we live in a world where there is full of human rights violation. But as a Pan Africanist, I will speak in a Pan-Africanist term, and I will speak as an African, and also look at African people. How are we as African people in the midst of other civilization? How do we survive within the midst of other colors who term us as inferior and low people? Basically, we understand that we, the black people, we are the home of human civilization. One can say Africa is the home of human civilization. And for that being the case, we must live in a world where we must respect the fundamental human right. We must live in a world where we can respect each other despite our color. But going down to the history, as one great scholar said, Marcus Garvey, he said, people who don't know the history of their origin is like a tree without any root. Basically, if one has to judge Africa as a continent, we need to be historically conscious. We need to know an Africa 400 years ago before the coming of a white man. How do we live together in a harmonized society? How do we live together in a communal society where we respect each other, where we also ensure that we follow the principles of human right? But when a white man came to this continent 400
Sorry, viewers, if you can bear with us.
years ago,
Brother Ishmael, your sound is cutting out ever so slightly. Are you able to repeat what you said? Can you hear me, Brother Ishmael? Can you repeat what you said? The connection was a bit. Oh dear. I think Brother Ishmael may have to come back unless the connection restores itself somehow. We know we have these issues from time to time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's so hopefully Brother Ishmael will join us again recently. Brother Raki, was there anything that you wanted to say in response to what Brother Ishmael was speaking to us about?
No, I was honestly looking forward to what he has wanted to mention, but I think he's right. I think, we should learn our children from Africa and African descent and the diaspora about, how was Africa, 400 ago, 100 years ago, when the white man didn't arrive there. How did our people live? And I think that is the root of our ancestors. And we should learn that to our next generation children's, to understand who we are, and make us proud again, and confident that we, whether they like it or not, we are here, and we should lead, by example, allowing them to see that our culture is very beautiful, and the way we live, the way we think, should deserve the right space on the planet. I think that was the things I caught up from brother.
Absolutely. It's it all sounds great, and it's all necessary. The challenge we have, and we've heard on this platform before, is that we don't truly control our own education systems across the board. I mean, some countries, they do have more of a control. For instance, I think it was I had learned that I think it's in Tanzania, where they learn where they only learn. I think it's in primary school they don't learn English. They only speak their indigenous languages
That's
until they get to
amazing.
secondary school. Exactly, and it just shows you. But if they can do it, then there's no signs that they're doing any worse off because they delayed teaching, English at a much later level. I think that would really help us as much as there is some debate about, okay, so which which language should we start with. But I think the more we can speak any indigenous language, I think it's a good thing. But it's about getting the control of our education systems, and then you look at, well, how do you do that? You have politics, but how do you control your politics? We need to build our economies. So it's like the wider the wider piece, because on the continent, if somebody can please tell me, but it's definitely the minority, if at all, on the continent that are teaching our children about our story, about our true origin.
Absolutely.
I think we're still learning about things that don't really concern us anymore, if they did at all. And that's a problem.
It absolutely is. But and I think that's it would be a huge challenge. But I'm hopeful, looking at the conversations we have on this channel and other, African diaspora channels on social media, is that I really felt a new kind of spirit among the African diaspora by brothers and sisters who are willing to envision a new kind of system where we don't forget who we are and where we are from. And I think that should be the foundation. I really hope that the current leaders will do the right thing in Africa to make sure that they will, build a system which fits to our people, closely to our roots, not forgetting, that we are indigenous. The system which we are living in right now is not ours. It is not working for us. We can see that. It is against us. And we should be aware of that, because there's no future for us in that system. It hasn't been made for us, right? We are the victims of that system. So I really hope that our future leaders will envision and taking the lead by making a system which is for us and created by us. Thank you. That is my last.
Absolutely. Oh no. Let's see if there are challenges. It happens I know that there are some challenges in Gambia. Sometimes it happens in Ghana. But we're glad that at least he got the opportunity to plant the seed for what it is that we were discussing. And I agree with you, being a fellow diaspora and myself. I think this is the time more than ever that we need to recognize that these divisions that have been created, false divisions that have been created amongst us who are born outside Africa and us who are born inside Africa, fake divisions. It's like we really need to focus on doing away with those things, because Africa's children are Africa's children wherever they are. We may have different accents, we may look a bit differently, dress a bit differently, but we are the same people. And what we don't realize is, I think sometimes there's a mentality that, fair enough, in the diaspora, that's where all the money is. People are doing well and things like that. But then people who maybe have not had the opportunity to leave the continent, if they want to leave the continent, even to travel, what they don't see necessarily or hear about is the struggle of us in the diaspora. We can have struggle with our own identities, because sometimes it's like, okay, so we look like this, but we're not necessarily accepted where we are. And then sometimes then if we come home, we come to the continent, we don't feel accepted as well, because we think, well, are we I'm not saying it's true, but there can be a feeling for us that, well, are we African enough? If we don't speak the language, if we don't. So these kinds of things, I'm hopeful. I am really hopeful that these kind of things melt away, and we realize that yes, in the diaspora there may be and truly there are more resources, but that's not all. There are resources in terms of perhaps more money, although we spend more money in the diaspora, but also just in terms of a difference of perspective, how we think because of the experience we have lived there. It is different. I'm not saying it's better, but it's different. So we should be able to come back and say, okay, we're not coming back to Africa or coming home to tell you how, that we must do this, but how about, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Let's try that. And in return, one of the things that, I am pleased to be home about is, like we said, we keep talking about the history, but imagine if we don't own our if we don't own our curricula, we don't own our education systems, how else are we going to learn? You have to speak to the people. You have to be around, you have to be among the people, speak to the elders, because a lot of our history as well was burned, right? It was all destroyed in a bid to help us to forget who we really are. So the more of us that can come, I'm not saying we all need to come, because the whole planet is our home. Like the whole planet is our home, because we were the first people here. But the more of us that can come, whether it's temporarily or permanently, this is what will help, because it needs both. If the continent could do it all by herself, she would have done it. But it goes to show you that the children of Africa elsewhere, they matter as well. And we must come, everybody's got their part to play.
Yeah, that's beautiful said, Sister Angela. And I really hope, these are tough challenges, right? But I think, we can't afford not to try it, because the future in this system, not changing anything, is not a future for us. We will be victim constantly, and unrooted. We will stay unrooted, and that would be a not happy, bright future, right? So I think we should invest from the diaspora, but also from the brothers and sisters in Africa, to come together, learn from each other, and see how we can make this a better continent, a better world, which aligns with us as Black people in this world. I think we really deserve that place, and I really look forward to collaboratively work together.
Absolutely. Greetings, Brother Daniel. How are you doing?
Greetings to Angela and Brother Raki.
Hello, Brother Daniel.
I'm doing well. Greetings,
Wonderful.
brother. I'm really excited to be here today. And we're having very interesting conversations about how we human rights, like any other race, because when it comes to human rights affecting people of African descent, we are at the bottom of everything. We get the last remains of human rights to humans around the world. The United Nations set this day to we can really investigate whether, because many times we have been advocating for the right to self-determination for the people in West Papua, but we realize that the United Nations has adopted a totalist approach when it comes to human rights abuses and human rights violations in West Papua. They don't even listen to the indigenous people, what they are saying. And this is an international organization that is supposed to protect and ensure that states uphold human rights, and also people around the world get their rights to determine their destiny as enshrined in the international law. But the United Nations has completely failed to address the humanitarian crisis in West Papua. It has failed to hold Indonesia accountable for the Black genocide. more than 500,000 indigenous people have died. And the reason why I get to think the reason why the United Nations is very slow to respond to the humanitarian needs of the people in West Papua and also respond to their calls for self-determination is because they are of Black descent. Otherwise, if they are white, probably West Papua would have been in the colonization list. So how do we address these challenges that we are facing? Just because of being Black, we're not being given equal rights, in spite of the UN declaring that this decade is for people of African descent. There's nothing that has been done to ensure that people of African descent get access to equal rights. They get the recognition that they deserve, and we also get justice for historical injustices that have been committed. We have been under 400 years of slavery, 13 centuries of Arab slavery, but no reparations. The Arabs do not even acknowledge this history. They do not acknowledge the role that they played in the enslavement of Africa and also the exploitation of Africa. We're also having the Europeans do not acknowledge the harm they caused by colonization of Africa. They have not even paid reparations. So when you're talking about human rights, and these are the same nations that are in the front line to speak about human rights and lecture Africans on human rights, I think they don't deserve that seat to lecture Africans on human rights when they have failed to deliver justice to Africa for the historical crimes against humanity they committed during the colonization and also the enslavement of Africa. So this day is for people of African descent to challenge these systems of oppression, the systems that continue to even suppress our voices. We have noted that also the technological racism has continued to escalate. This year has been the worst for us on Facebook. We go live, but actually you don't see the live viewers. In spite of having more than 323,000 followers, you'll find that there's only one person who's watching, or probably 0 viewers. So Facebook introduced a new algorithm which blocks live videos. And therefore, you find that even our followers do not even get the live videos. And the page engagement has really gone down. So now that's the technological racism, and it undermines the social media rights, which is also part of the human rights. We need to be able to express ourselves without being shut down, because it's really important that we get this out. People get to know what people of African descent are facing, the human rights violation, and so that they can be also part of the solution by getting access to the information that we are providing. So I think I'm going to stop here so that I can also give other panelists some room to be able to contribute.
Brother Ishmael, do you want to come in there? Welcome back. Let's unmute you.
I was having some issue with connection here.
Okay, we understand.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Basically, what I was saying about Africa is that we have been victimized for far too long. You know, we live in a world, in a society where we were allowed or told to believe that African people do not actually fit in certain societies. We understand that if we are to talk about human rights violation, we have to go far too long, 400 years ago, when a white man came to Africa. That was where the human rights violation started in Africa. The coming of a white man in Africa. the atrocity and the killing of a black man by a white man was part of human rights violation. And this was 400 years ago. From slavery coming down to colonialism. And after taking more than 15 million Africans out of this continent, they take them to the New World, America and Europe, West Indies. They introduce them to a society where we actually know that black people don't fit in that society. And that's where racism begins. You live in a society where you feel so inferior upon yourself as a black man. And 400 years ago, when they were taking Africans out of this continent, they believe that African people are more strong and energetic, and they are also, they can resist to the climate that they are going. But in this present generation, we have seen what is happening around the world, especially in Europe and America. So basically, human rights violation is something that, we have faced for far too long. And it is high time for Africans to rethink, to recalculate and redefine our way of life. And how do we do this? We have to ensure that we bridge the gap between those in the diaspora and in Africa. We have to ensure that those who thought that they were disconnected in Africa, because some of our brothers and sisters who are in diaspora, they thought that they are disconnected in Africa. They thought that they have no place in Africa because of how we Africans who are in the continent, how we see them. And which I also call as a human rights violation, because they are part and parcel of Africa. Therefore, we have to ensure that our brothers and sisters, we connect them to Africa, to feel the love of Africa, to let them know that this is their home. There is no place like home. And I have always been saying this, no matter how long a stick stay in the river, it will never turn to a fish. No matter how long you stay in Europe and America, the white people will never see you as a white man. They will always be discriminating you day and night. Marcus Garvey said when he was advocating, and even before Marcus Garvey, long before in the mid-19th century, when our Pan Africanists, people like Martin Delany, Alexandra Crumel, in the early 19th century, when they were advocating for Africa's unity, the early voices, they stick on a principle and a philosophy that black people cannot live in the midst of a white people because it will breed corruption, it will breed what we call as human rights violation. This was in the early mid-19th century. If those people can see the future, they can foresee, they can think, they can see the vision of how we black people and white people will live together one day. I think definitely in this present generation, we have to ensure that our brothers and sisters, we connect them to Africa so that the violation, the human rights violation that they are facing in the diaspora will not happen again, because it has to stop. It's far too long now. We live with people who doesn't consider us as human beings, because I could remember 400 years ago when a white man came to Africa and he saw a black man, he ran away and saying that, oh, look at those black monkeys. That is where human rights violation started. You see a black man, you call him a black monkey. That is a human rights violation. So therefore, we are living with people who doesn't consider us as human beings. They only consider Africans as a human being when they are casing their interest in Africa. That was the only time they signed a treaty of friendship with us, thinking that they can manipulate our mindset. They can still decolonize our mindset. Whenever they are in a treaty of their own interest with African people, they see us as people. They see us as human beings. They see us as their brothers. They see us as their friends. But when the interest is done, white people don't see black people as human beings. So therefore, I am urging my fellow brothers and sisters who are in the diaspora and also in the continent to come together as one. We show love to each other. We see each other as one family. We bridge that gap between the diasporians and the African people. We also welcome them to the continent because most of them feel that they are disconnected. when you see a black American when they come to Africa. I've seen that several times when they come to Africa, especially in my country. What happened? People don't see them as African people. They see them as European people when their origin, when their ancestors actually came from Africa. And I will give a scenario that happens in my country a few years ago, where I witnessed it myself. A black American, which I know that his origins are from Africa, was humiliated by fellow black people, saying that you have to go back to your country, you don't belong to here, and which is a wrong misconcept.
Absolutely. I don't know if Brother Ishmael, are you still there? I think he's frozen. But yes, we know that there are parts, there are places where there are those divisions, like I said, and we just have to work on melting that. There are divisions everywhere. There are, you know, we talk about, I guess, racism in the diaspora, but tribalism on the continent, you know. So of course there are things to work on. So that doesn't take away from the human rights violations we've suffered due to the introduction of colonialism and imperialism, which we're still living, absolutely. But my personal choice, whilst we need to be aware of what's going on and how we're still being suppressed, we also need to put more of our energy in building, in coming together to build things, you know, build up the country, build, whether it's physically building buildings, you know. We have here, and I'm sure it's very common across Africa, children going to school under trees, you know, like they don't actually have a building, you know. We suffer, I'll say we suffer sometimes from trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to compare ourselves with the West. That one right there, I'll just call, we cannot compare ourselves, as in our systems, our structures, we cannot compare ourselves to the West, because it's our label that went, it's our labor that went into building the West. And so they have the benefit of our skills, our talents, our brawn, our brains. And that's what left the continent and left us with what we have here. I am not saying that we don't have brains, talent, skills on the continent, but if most of your effort goes to building elsewhere, that's the place that will flourish. And that's why we want to, and we continually encourage our brothers and sisters outside Africa to come back to the continent, because now this place is being depleted, despite being the landmass with the richest wealth, you know, in the world. It's depleted because let's just say that wealth is not being shared for the benefit of our people, and it won't be until we remember that we remember how to take back control of it. So I echo what Brother Ishmael was saying. Yes, and that is the vision of Global Pan Africanism Network, to create a United States of Africa. Yes, there are lots of things to deal with. But it starts with we have to learn, and the thing is, learning, we can't just learn in our head, we have to walk the talk. So when we talk about uniting and uniting, you can't unite with somebody if you're not going to invest your time and money with them. It's not going to happen. You know, it means, yes, we have to deal with our conditioning that we have been taught to not trust each other, you know. So sometimes it's not always going to work, but if we don't actually do it, we don't try, then we're never going to move forward. So maybe we try on a small level, you know, we invest, you know, people come together, they all put maybe the same money in for things, or they use their skills to help build something. But it's not all about our financial resources. So human rights violations, yes, they exist, absolutely. Should we ignore them? No. But like I said, absolutely, Sister Leah, we do have to try. We do have to try. because then we don't have anybody else to blame but ourselves. Not necessarily that it's easy, but I'm very grateful that we do have platforms like this, because I think actually we need to be reminded so much. We need to be reminded so much that we are a beautiful people. We are a strong people. We need to work together. We need to learn to trust. We need to be reminded. Why? Because there are many, 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 many more messages, symbols, signals out there that tell us the opposite. So we have to keep reminding ourselves. We have to keep talking about it, almost to try and get ourselves to remember and believe that, oh yeah, what they're saying is nonsense. But we can't expect to tell our people once and it's like, oh yeah, we're all one people and it's going to happen. No, we have to keep reminding ourselves. So Brother Raki and Brother Daniel, I'll leave you to make your closing remarks before we wrap up, because it's about time. We're almost at the top of the hour. So what's your closing or your parting message for our viewers today, please?
Thank you very much, Sister Angela. I'd like to encourage people of African descent to come together so that we can build the United States of Africa. And we are going to do that by creating the infrastructures and the institutions that are necessary to facilitate the total unification of Africa. And we invite people of African descent to volunteer their skills and to make contributions towards the realization of this vision. As we celebrate the International Human Rights Day, I also call upon people of African descent and organizations around the world to step in and join the quest for self-determination for West Papua, so that they can get the right to determine their fate as a nation. Many times they have suffered under Indonesian colonial occupation, and they are not getting the attention that they deserve. There's need for the international community to respond to the humanitarian crisis in West Papua and the increasing militarization of West Papua, so that the indigenous people can get the right to self-determination, and they can be accorded full human rights like any other race. Because I believe human rights should be universal, and also I believe that West Papua deserves the right to determine its destiny. Thank you very much, Sister Angela.
Thank you, Brother Daniel. Thanks very much. Brother Raki, do you have a parting message for the viewers?
Yes.
Whoops, one moment. One moment, brother. I think you're muted. Oh, Brother Raki, can you unmute yourself? I can't unmute you from this side. That's better.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted now. All right, yes, thank you. No, first of all, I want to thank the Global Pan Africanism Network once again for hosting me and giving me the platform. And I think I underline all the words of all the speakers, including Sister Angela and Brother Daniel, that we should constantly work together, that we should constantly act the change we want to see, because there's nobody else who is going to do this for us. They want to keep us on this level, on the bottom of the system, not having the control. So we can't afford us not to try every single day. And what I'm doing is I see the change all around me, because I am the change I want to see. I am the change my children have to see, to believe that they are capable of realizing the change they are doing. And I'm really, it gives me really optimism to be here once again. And I'm looking forward to the next event where we can come together and learn and share the steps we have made. thank you all. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Brother Raki and Brother Daniel. And thank you to the viewers, whether you're watching live or on replay. Thanks for engaging. Please keep engaging. Send us questions if you want to take part in creating the vision, realizing the vision of the United States of Africa. It's a huge vision, but it's one that we can achieve if we just persist. For me, it will happen. It's just a question of how quickly do you want it to happen. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll be back on the platform. If nothing else, then on Saturday with the Black Mental Health Matters at 1 p.m. GMT. So thank you. And yes, we'll see you on another occasion. Thank you. Goodbye. Thanks, Brother Raki. Thanks, Brother Daniel.
Thank you, Sister Angela, Brother Daniel.